Good afternoon, lovely children. Again, I'm a little bit late, but maybe some of you will join me again. Yesterday was a disaster, wasn't it? I was late because I had my plasma donation, and then I was interrupted on the computer and at the door and everywhere, and I just decided, okay, that was not meant to be. So I'm going to start reading chapter 6 again, like I was going to do yesterday. As you can see, I'm sitting somewhere else. I'm now sitting in my living room. Behind me, you can see my favorite painting, which my friend Sasha made for me. And everybody is in a different room today. So chapter 6. If you are online, come and say hi. I can see there's 2 of you. So just type in a message if you want to. I'll see if I can stop my story for a second and acknowledge you, or we can have a little chat after if you want. Tangle's time will come one day, Jonathan said. We were lying in the green grass down by the stream, and it was one of those mornings when you simply cannot believe that Tangle or any other evil in the world exists. It was perfectly still and peaceful, the water bubbling slightly round the stones under the bridge, which was the only sound you could hear. It was lovely lying here on your back, seeing nothing at all, except the little white clouds up in the sky. You could lie like that and feel happy and sing a little to yourself. Hello, Ava. I didn't want to remember Tangle at all, but all the same I said, "What do you mean by that? That Tangle's time will come. What do you mean?" "Well, that what will happen to him happens to all tyrants sooner or later," said Jonathan. "That he will be crushed like a louse and will be gone forever." "I hope it will happen soon," I said. And then there was a little mumble from Jonathan. "Though he's strong, Tangle, and he's got Cuddler." Again, that terrible, terrible name. I wanted to ask him about it, but I didn't. It was just as well not to know anything about Cuddler on such a lovely morning. And then Jonathan said something even worse than everything else. "Rusky, you're going to be alone at Knight's Farm for a little while, because I have to go to Wild Rose Valley." How could he say anything so terrible? How could he think that I would stay at Knight's Farm for a single minute without him? If he was thinking of hurling himself straight into Tangle's jaws, then I was going to be with him, and I told him so. And then he looked very strangely at me and he said, "Rusky, I have only one brother, whom I wish to protect from all evil. How can you then ask that I shall take you with me when I need all my strength for something else? Something that's really dangerous?" That didn't help at all. I was sad and angry, so that everything just boiled inside me. I cried out, "And you! How can you ask that I shall stay alone at Knight's Farm, waiting for you, and perhaps you'll never come back?" I remembered suddenly how things had been that time when Jonathan was dead and away from me, and how I was lying in my sofa bed back on earth, not knowing whether I'd ever see him again. Oh, it was like looking down into a black hole, just thinking about it. And now he wanted to leave me again, just disappear into the dangers about what I knew nothing. And if he didn't come back this time, there would be no help, and I would be alone forever and ever. I could feel myself getting angrier and angrier and angrier, and I shouted at him even louder. And I said as many horrible things that I could think up. It was not easy for him to calm me down, not even a little. But of course, things went as he wished in the end. I knew that he understood everything better than I did. Hold on a minute. I just need to go and get the cookies out of the oven. I forgot about them. Oops. Let's just say they're super crunchy. I will say hi to Noah. I'm catching Noah up on the story because he's a bit shy and he didn't want to listen to it. But I'm catching him up at nighttime, and hopefully when he's caught up, he's going to join us for the story here on the couch. Anyway, he will have very crunchy chocolate bickies today. So finally, he understood that it was no use getting angry. He had to go. Jonathan was kind to me. He gave me newly baked bread with butter and honey on it. He told me sagas and stories, but I couldn't listen to them. The only saga that I could think about was Tangles, which I was beginning to think was the cruelest and most violent of all sagas. And I asked Jonathan why he had to undertake something so dangerous. Couldn't he just as well stay at home by the fire at Knight's Farm and enjoy himself? But then Jonathan said there were things you have to do, even if they are dangerous. Why? I said. Well, otherwise you aren't a human being, you're just a bit of filth. He had told me what he was going to do. He was going to rescue Orva from Katla Cavern. Because Orva means more than even Sophia, Jonathan said. And without Orva, it was probably the end of Nangiala's green valleys. It was very late now. The fire was out in the hearth, and night had come. And then the day came, and I stood at the gate and watched Jonathan ride away, disappearing into the mist. Yes, there was mist all over Cherry Valley that morning, and you must believe me when I say it was as if my heart would break when he just became blurred and vanished, and I was left alone. It was unbearable. It was as if I was mad with grief, and I ran to the stable and I got Fjalar out and I threw myself in the saddle and I set off after Jonathan. I had to see him one more time. He was going to Tulip Farm first, he had told me, to get his orders from Sophia. I rode there. I rode like a maniac, and I caught him up just outside the farm. And then I was almost ashamed and I wanted to hide. He already heard me and he had already seen me. What do you want? He said. Well, what did I want? Are you sure you're coming back? I said. It was all I could think of saying. And then he rode up beside me, and our horses stood side by side, and Jonathan wiped something off my cheek, tears of something, with his forefinger, and he said, Don't cry, Rusky. We'll meet again, I promise you. And if not here, it'll be in Nangilima. Nangilima? I said, What's that now? I'll tell you some other time, said Jonathan. I don't understand how I bore that time when I was alone at Knight's Farm, or how I got the days to go by. I looked after my animals, of course. I was in the stable with Fjalar most of the time, and for long spells I talked to my rabbits. I fished a little, I practiced shooting with my bow and arrows, but everything just seemed pointless when Jonathan wasn't there. Sophia brought food for me now and again, and we talked about Jonathan. I kept hoping she would say that he'll be coming home shortly, but she didn't. I also wanted to ask her why she didn't go herself to try to save Orva instead of sending Jonathan. But why should I ask when I actually knew the answer? Tangle hated Sophia. Jonathan had explained it to me. Sophia in Cherry Valley and Orva in Wild Rose Valley. They are his worst enemies, and you can be sure he knows it, Jonathan had said when he was telling me how things were. He got Orva in Katla Cavern, and he would like to put Sophia in there too, to pine and just waste away. The wretch. He's promised 15 white horses as a reward to the person who hands over Sophia to him, dead or alive. Jonathan told me that, so of course I realized why Sophia had to keep away from Wild Rose Valley, and it was Jonathan who had to go instead. Tango knew nothing about him, they thought, or at least they hoped, though there was someone who had realized that Jonathan was not just a gardener's boy, the person who had come to our place in the night, the person I had seen by the sideboard. Sophia couldn't help worrying about him. That man knows too much, she said. She asked me to send a message over to her if anyone else came snooping around Knight's Farm, and I said that it was no use anyone trying in the sideboard again because we had moved all the secret papers to another place. Now we had them in the oat bin out in the harness room in a very large snuff box which was hidden under all the oats. Sophia went with me to the harness room and dug up the snuff box and put another message into it. A snuff box, maybe you don't know, but back in the olden days, people, sometimes people smoke cigarettes and cigars and pipes and things still these days. Well, back in the olden days, it was quite common for people to chew or to sniff tobacco. I don't, it's gross. But anyway, they had to keep it in a box, and that was a snuff box. So it was a good hiding place, she thought, and I thought so too. Stick it out if you can, said Sophia as she was leaving. I know it's difficult, but you must stick it. It was difficult too, especially in the evenings and at night. I dreamt terrible dreams about Jonathan and worried about him every waking moment as well. One evening I rode down to the Golden Cockerel. I couldn't bear just sitting at home at Knight's Farm. It was so silent and my thoughts could be heard only too well. They weren't the kind of thoughts that cheered you up. They all stared at me in the Golden Cockerel. Yes, they did, when I came into the inn without Jonathan. What now? Said Jossie. Only half of the Lionheart brothers. What have you done with the other half? What have you done with Jonathan? It was difficult for me. I remembered what Sophia and Jonathan had preached to me. Whatever happened, I must not tell anyone what Jonathan was doing and where he had gone. Not a single living person. So I pretended I hadn't heard Jossie's question. But Hubert was sitting there at his table, and he wanted to know too. Yes, where is Jonathan? He said. Surely Sophia hasn't got rid of her gardener's boy. Jonathan's out hunting, I said. He's up in the mountains hunting wolves. I had to say something, and I thought that was a good invention, as Jonathan had said there were lots of wolves in the mountains. And Sophia wasn't at the inn that evening, but otherwise the whole village was there as usual. They sang their songs and enjoyed themselves as usual, but I didn't sing with them because for me things weren't as usual. Without Jonathan, I didn't like it there, so I didn't stay long. Don't look so sad, Carl Lionheart, said Jossie, as I was leaving. Jonathan will soon have finished hunting, and then he will be home. Oh, how I liked him for saying that. He patted my cheek and gave me a few delicious cakes to take home with me. Here, you can put those inside you when you're sitting there at home waiting for Jonathan, he said. He was kind, the Golden Cockerel. It seemed almost slightly less lonely just because of that. I rode home with my cakes and I sat in front of the fire eating them. It was a warm spring weather now in the daytime, almost summer, and yet I still had to light our big fire, for the warmth of the sun had not yet managed to get through the thick walls of our house. It felt cold as I crept into my cupboard bed, but I soon fell asleep, and I dreamt about Jonathan, a dream so terrifying that it woke me up. Yes, Jonathan, I cried, I'm coming. I cried, and I rushed out of bed. In the darkness around me, there seemed to be echoes of wild cries. Jonathan's cries. He had called to me in my dream that he needed help. I knew it. I could still hear him. And I wanted to rush straight out into the dark night to get him, wherever he was. But I realized how impossible that was. What could I do? No one was so helpless as I was. I could only creep back into my bed again and lay there trembling, feeling lost and small and afraid and lonely. The loneliest person in the whole world, I thought. Neither did it help at all that much that morning came. It was a bright, clear day. Of course, it was harder then to remember exactly how terrible the dream had been, but Jonathan had cried out for help, and that I couldn't forget. My brother had called for me, so I didn't have to go out and try and find him. I sat for hours out with my rabbits and thought about what I should do. I had no one to talk to, no one to ask. I had to decide all by myself. I couldn't go to Sophia because she would surely stop me. She would never let me go. She wasn't that foolish. For it was foolish, I'm sure, that I wanted to go, and dangerous too. The most dangerous thing of all. And I wasn't at all brave. I don't know how long I sat there, leaning against the stable wall, tearing up the grass. I tore off every blade of grass around me, but I didn't notice until afterwards, not while I'd been sitting there being tormented. The hours went by. Perhaps I would be sitting there still if I hadn't suddenly remembered what Jonathan had said, that sometimes you have to do things that are dangerous, otherwise you're not a human being, but a bit of filth. So I decided. I banged my fist down on the rabbit hutch so that the rabbits jumped, and I said out loud so that it would be certain, "I'll do it. I'll do it. I'm not a bit of filth." Oh, how good it felt to have decided. "I know I'm right," I said to the rabbits, for I had no one else to talk to. The rabbits, well, they would have to become wild rabbits now. I took them carefully out of the hutch and carried them in my arms to the gate, and I showed them the lovely green cherry valley. "The whole valley is full of grass," I said, "and there are lots of other rabbits that you can play with. I think you'll have much more fun than in a hutch. But just watch out for the fox and Hubert." The three of them seemed a little surprised. They scampered about a little bit first, as if they were wondering whether this could possibly be right. But then they made off and vanished in a flash amongst the green hummocks. Then I hurried to get things ready, gathering together everything I was to take with me. A blanket to wrap around me when I had to sleep, a tinderbox to make a fire with, a nosebag full of oats for Fjallar, and a haversack of food for myself. Well, I had nothing but bread, but that was the best bread, Sophia's ring loaves. She'd been over with a whole pile of them, and I had stuffed the haversack full. That'll last a long time, I thought, and when it's all gone, I'll just have to eat grass like the rabbits. Sophia was going to bring some soup the next day, she had promised, but by that time I would already be far away. Poor Sophia. She would have to eat her own soup, but I couldn't let her just wonder where I'd got to. She would have to know, though not until it was too late to stop me. I took a bit of charcoal from the hearth and I wrote in large letters on the kitchen wall, "Someone called me in my dream, and I've gone to find him far, far away beyond the mountains." I wrote it in that funny way because I thought that if someone else apart from Sophia came to Knight's Farm, someone snooping, then he wouldn't know what it meant. He would perhaps think that I had tried to write a poem or something. But Sophia would at once understand what I meant. I'm away looking for Jonathan. I was glad, and for once I felt really strong and brave. I sang to myself, "Someone called me in my dream, and I've gone to find him far, far away beyond the mountains." And oh, how good it sounded. Although I can't really sing. I would have to tell Jonathan all this when I found him, I thought. If I found him. And then, what would happen if I didn't? My courage suddenly ran out of me all at once. I was a little bit of filth again, a scared little bit of filth, as I'd always been, and then I longed for Fjallar just as usual. I had to go out to him immediately. That was the only thing that would help me a little when I was sad and anxious. How many times had I stood with him in his stall when I couldn't bear to be alone? How many times hadn't it comforted me just to look at his wise eyes and feel that he was warm and his nose was soft? Without Fjallar, I couldn't have lived through that time when Jonathan was away. I ran to the stable, but Fjallar was not alone in his stall. Hubert was standing there. Yeah, Hubert was standing there, petting my horse and grinning when he caught sight of me. My heart began to thump. He's the traitor, I thought. I think I had felt this for a long time, and now I was certain. Hubert was the traitor. Why otherwise did he come snooping here in Knight's Farm? The man knows too much, Sophia had said, and Hubert was that man, I was sure. How much did he know? Did he know everything? Did he know what we had hidden in the oat bin too? I tried not to show him how frightened I was. "What are you doing here?" I said, as assertively as I could. "What do you want with Fjallar?" "Nothing," said Hubert. "I was on my way to you, but I heard your horse whinny, and I like horses. He's a fine horse, Fjaller. You can't catch me out, I thought, and I said, What do you want of me, then? I want to give you this, said Hubert, and he handed me something wrapped up in a white cloth. You looked so sad and hungry last night that I thought perhaps you were short of food here on Knight's Farm, with Jonathan away hunting. Now I didn't know what to say or do. I muttered my thanks, but I couldn't take food from a traitor. Or could I? I fumbled with the piece of cloth and found a large piece of mutton, that dried smoked mutton, which is actually so good. Spring fiddle, it's called, I think. It smelled wonderful. I felt like sinking my teeth into it at once, although I should really have told Hubert to take his spring fiddle away and himself with it. But I didn't anyhow. It was Sophia's task to deal with traitors. I would have to pretend that I knew nothing and understood nothing. Actually, I very much wanted the meat, as nothing could be better than that for my food haversack. Hubert was still standing by Fjaller. You really do have a fine horse, he said, almost as fine as my Blender. Blender is white, I said. Do you like white horses? Yes, I like white horses a lot, said Hubert. Then surely you would like 15, wouldn't you? I thought, but I didn't say it. Instead, Hubert said something terrible. Shouldn't we give Fjaller a few oats? He should have something nice too. I couldn't stop him. He went straight into the harness room, and I ran after him. I wanted to shout, Stop it! But I couldn't get a word out. Hubert opened the lid of the oat bin and picked up the scoop that was lying on top. I closed my eyes because I didn't want to see him scoop up the snuff box, but then I could hear him swear. And when I opened my eyes, I saw a little rat come diving out of the edge of the bin. Hubert tried to kick her, but she ran away across the stable door and disappeared into some secret hole. She bit my thumb, the wretch, said Hubert. He was standing there inspecting his thumb, and then I took my chance. Quickly, I filled the scoop with oats, and then, bam, I slammed down the lid right in front of Hubert's nose. Fjaller will be pleased, I said. He's not used to getting oats at this time of the day. But you're not quite so pleased, I thought, as Hubert curtly said goodbye and slouched off through the stable door. He didn't get his paws on any secret messages that time, but now it was necessary to find a new hiding place. I thought for a long time, and in the end I buried the snuff box in the potato cellar, inside the door, on the left. And then I wrote a message on the kitchen wall, a new puzzle for Sophia. I wrote, Redbeard wants white horses and knows too much. Watch out. I could do no more for Sophia, and at sunrise the next morning, before anyone in Cherry Valley was awake, I left Knight's Farm and I rode up towards the mountains. Now here you can see a picture of Hubert petting Fjaller. And here you can see a picture of Carl trotting away on Fjaller, making his way down to the mountains. And tomorrow it will be chapter 7. I'm going to go and have a little look what messages I have here. Hi, everybody. Hi to Noah. Did you guys make honey biscuits? I made choc chip cookies, a whole batch. There would actually be enough for all of you. I made so many, I don't know what to do with them. It's a shame that it's a lockdown. Otherwise, I would have brought them to school for you all to have a little munch on at morning tea. And marshmallow slime. Oh, you'll have to tell me what the recipe is. That would be a fun thing to do for Noah as well, I think. Oh, hello, Mr. Lawrence. Hold on. Cameron Lawrence. Whose dad? I love you. Like the story. Whose dad is dead? Cameron Lawrence. Who's listening there with us? Come tell me your name, because I am really awful sometimes with surnames. You're probably one of Machin's children. Or, hold on, have I got a Lawrence in my classroom? No, I don't have a Lawrence in my classroom. Who are you? I'm glad you love the story. Anyway, tomorrow I'll just keep on reading. I might be a little bit late sometimes because it is the holidays now officially after all. And yeah, I'm very curious what's going to happen in the mountains tomorrow. I'm going to go and finish it off now, and see if I can still save that last batch of bickies that I burnt in the oven, and that's it. Okay, bye everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.